I want to go to the cornerback that they took in round 5. This felt like the the DJ Reed replacement pick. That's another nickel they took in round 5, who's a hell of a corner. I'd never heard of Sam Womack. Now, I don't do a ton of research on the draft, but all my papers and stuff, he was not listed. I know that PFF liked him. What do you think of the 5'9" cornerback from Toledo who was not invited to the combine?
So we talked about this a little bit on the Locked On 49ers podcast, myself and Brian Peacock. And it was interesting. It was interesting watching him because first I put the film on and it was like Toledo. It was very hard for me to find Toledo's defensive film. I couldn't find anything in my drive that I have, which there's a bunch of teams in there, a bunch of schools, bunch of years.
I got that drive.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything on Toledo, all 22. So I go to YouTube and I'm trying to see like if I can find anything for something to take away. I'm watching it and I'm like, well, I don't see him out here. I'm looking at the corners. I see 0. I see these other guys. And because when he was drafted, everything I saw was like number 19. And then it's like, oh, wait, I find out he's number 0. So then I go back, watch it. I'm watching some stuff. And a couple of things came to mind. One, he looked much bigger than 5'9", which was weird. And Peacock attributes it to his like long arms. He has like almost like 32-inch arm length. So maybe that just makes him look like longer and taller. But he looked like more like 5'11", 6 foot than he did 5'9". So that was one thing. And I thought he played like that. I was expecting because when he was drafted, you see his size and there are a lot of people like, oh, twitched up, smaller guy is going to play in the slot. And I saw someone that plays like an outside cornerback, which isn't a bad thing.
That you say that. Keep going.
It just looked like
real quick. Guess what? Guess what position he played at the rookie minicamp?
What position?
Outside the whole time. Left corner. Nothing in the middle. That was Quantrez Knight from UCLA. Anyway, keep going. You're right.
Right. So
you're right.
So you see that to me, and I didn't know that, but to me, he looked like an outside cornerback.
See, Croc knows his shit. I'm just saying. No idea. That's right.
He looked like an outside cornerback. I thought his movements. I didn't see super quick twitch type guy. I did see good ball skills, and then when you look at his numbers, I think that reflects that. How many pass deflections? I think he led the conference 3 straight years in passes defense. So I think that's big time. That's showing that at the very least, this guy is in position to make a play on the ball. And more times than not, he's making the play. So that was awesome. I did see one play where he had this like interception over his shoulder on a vertically pushing route. I thought that was good. So it was interesting watching him, and I couldn't find a whole lot of things on him. But overall, I saw more outside guy than nickel. And that's not to say he can't play nickel. It just, I was expecting to see something different because of how he was kind of sold to me when the 49ers made that pick. Like, oh, that's their slot. That's Cohn Williams' replacement. And when I watched him, I'm like, no, this is like a legit outside cornerback.
Okay, this is it just occurred to me, and this is silly because the guy I'm going to compare him to was a first-round pick. But in terms of just athletic profile, I think the cornerback that Sam Womack most compares to on this roster is Jason Verrett. Jason Verrett's 5'9". Jason Verrett runs a 4'3". So Jason Verrett was more explosive than Sam Womack, but
I think Womack ran.
He was a 4'3" something.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm just saying. I'm not saying he's going to be Jason Verrett, but I can see the Niners having success with Verrett and being like, well, I mean, why don't we see if a guy has a similar profile, maybe it'll work here. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're thinking. Womack.
Right. But yeah, I didn't see, and I wish I would have seen more. I didn't see like a lot of press reps. So there wasn't a whole lot for me to take away from what I saw with Womack, other than he looked like an outside cornerback, which again, that's not a bad thing. It's just not what I was expecting to see.
In camp, he played off mostly, and it's kind of how it's not how Mosley plays. It's how Ambry played last year. Just a lot of off coverage, keeping it in front of you. I'd like to. The only guy who can really play effective press coverage on this team was Jason Verrett when he was healthy. I'd like to see someone else try. I mean, maybe Travarius can do it.
Well, Ambry Thomas was a press man corner at Michigan. And that was his thing. And then he gets to the 49ers, he's playing a lot of off. And I just remember thinking like, oh, well, he's not an off guy. Like, they need to play him close to the line of scrimmage. And then he's having those struggles, and Kyle Shanahan saying, oh, yeah, if you would have told me at the beginning of the year, like, this is the same guy, I thought he was just terrible. Like, essentially that's what Kyle was saying. And it's like, well, yeah, you're having him do something completely opposite of what he did that made you draft him in the 3rd round.
Right. So he's going to come on later in the season. I mean, that's what happens to a lot of the, Samson Ebukam was the same way on the D-line.
Right. You had to go through like that process of truly one, buying in, because I know how frustrating it is to try to learn something new and go through the process of like looking like trash, right? Like that happened to me, smaller scale, being with San Jose Sabercats, where they changed up a lot of my technique. And I'm just like, dude, I'm getting whooped out here. Like this not me. And by the time the season started, it finally started to click. And then I was better for it, but it sometimes if you go that route, it takes a while.
That's why it can be dangerous making big investments. You know, I love cornerbacks, and I think they're really important. But if you give $100 million to a cornerback who did, you know, these specific techniques, and you don't realize you're asking them to do a whole different set of techniques, it just might not work out.
Well, this is what you do.
Yeah.
Pay him to do what he did well.
What he did.
And there's a lot of people that try to make a guy fit into like their scheme when it's like, no. I remember talking to I was on FaceTime. My buddy was on FaceTime, my boy Lavelle Hawkins, and he had McCourty on FaceTime. Mm-hmm. And so I'm asking him some questions about the Patriots. And he talked about Stephon Gilmore. And they were like, listen, they just told him, you go get that guy. Yeah. You know, it like, don't worry about any of this other scheme stuff. Don't worry about anything. Like, do what this guy does well, you know? And I think sometimes coaches try to get a little too cute and they change up a guy and then you end up getting a player who like that's not who he is. That's not what he is.
I think that's the Niners' specific problem on their offensive line. Every time they draft a guy, they're like, he played left tackle in college, but we think he's a right guard. Word? When has that ever worked for you? You always switch the offensive lineman around, and then year 2 or 3, they're like, we're going to try playing him at his original position. Oh, that's brilliant. That's freaking brilliant. You always do that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's neither here nor there.